Okay, well, it looks like, and if some people are joining late, we're actually going to record this, or if you've got, you have colleagues in there that didn't make it, we'll be sending out the recording. I'm Dennis Smeltzer. I'm the president of TSANet. Actually, on the line with us is Stephanie Benson, who's out of the UK, and she is heads up our member services area. The whole idea of this particular webinar, which has always been well attended, is that people transition in and out of roles and things like that, and there needs to be kind of a constant reminder about what TSANet is. Part of the problem with TSANet, before we get too far into it, is that it's a service that's not used a whole lot. And because of that, people have a tendency not to know about it, or people move in and out and they hear something about it, but they really don't know what it is and that kind of thing. So what we try to do is put these on at least every quarter so that you can get informed about TSANet. So we're targeting this at someone who maybe has heard about TSANet, or maybe they used it once, but they didn't really know exactly what they were doing or what the details were about it. So what we're going to do is kind of dive into the weeds a little bit on it, but we're going to keep it at a pretty high level. And I'm going to give you a little demo. We'll go into the tactical use of how you actually use it. And here are the topics we're going to cover. We'll talk about the organization, and the membership levels is kind of a big deal. We'll talk about a little detail about that. And these custom groups is something really taken off. And then we'll get into, well, how do you place a call, and how do you know what relationship to use, and all these kind of things. What we're also going to touch on a little bit is one of the key things I like to bring up when we do these, is to understand that we are a not-for-profit organization. Everything that you see here that we do as an organization was built upon our members telling us this is what we want you to do. We've been set up for not-for-profit back in 1993 and have been a very member-driven organization and continue to be that way now. Some of the things we're not going to talk about on this particular call are things like case exchange and building custom groups and in the details of the partner programs. We won't get into too much of that, but those are all things that the members wanted us to do. And so I guess one thing a little bit different about us coming in as I'm sure you guys all get presentations from vendors trying to sell you on things. We're set up as an organization for you, and for you to take advantage of that. I work, the way we're set up, we work under a set of bylaws. I work for a board of directors, and that board is elected by the members. And we have a small global staff, always have, but we've actually got several hundred members now, and it gets into this limited member thing that we'll talk about. And I think one of the key things for a lot of the people that are on this call is that some of companies, many companies now, are using this as a very strategic way to set up their relationships. And they do that because we've got a legal framework that's already in place. It's been around for 20 years. All the lawyers have agreed to it, and every company that comes into TSANet agrees to that legal framework. So it's very easy for you to build relationships and execute them very quickly, as opposed to typically going through a CSA path where you set up a one-to-one relationship with every specific vendor. So we'll show you a little bit about that. I want to talk about the membership levels a little bit so everybody gets kind of a good idea of what that is. When we started TSANet, the whole concept and big value prop at that time was, hey, we're going to create an ecosystem, a many-to-many group relationship, and one company can join into that ecosystem, and by default, then they can communicate and collaborate with everybody that's in that ecosystem. And that has morphed into what we call an open group relationship, where you join into this group and you agree and you're obligated to work with all the other members that are part of that group under certain circumstances. And because it's a group where you could have not only your competitors but also your partners in there, you got to put some parameters around how this is going to work, because you don't want to obligate yourself or obligate resources to areas where you don't have a stake in the game. So what we did, and what the founders of this set it up, was that there had to be a mutual customer that was part of the equation here. So if a call has come in and you're working the issue and you need to engage and work with another company, there needs to be a mutual customer involved. And that typically means an outside end user that has a support entitlement with the company that you're calling. And that's since morphed into what you see here, which is the basic TSANet and the premium TSANet. And the basic TSANet is a many-to-many group, and the premium TSANet is a subset of the basic TSANet. Because you can join at a premium level and a basic level from a membership perspective, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to call the other partner under the premium TSANet. And that's because of this mutual customer rule. But if you are a premium member, you're already part of the basic TSANet. But what's really key here for you to understand is that it's going to be, if you're calling another member, it's going to be what relationship you're going to use is going to be based upon the entitlement level that that end user customer has with the other member that you're calling. If you're calling within the premium TSANet, which is a required 24/7 that has higher level SLAs in it, so you've got that obligation from the other member, but that mutual customer has to have that obligation with the company that you're calling. If they don't have that, then you can likely call them under the basic TSANet. Okay, the other thing that's changed, and this has been something, well, it's been around for quite some time, but it really has taken off over the past couple of years, is this concept behind custom groups. And that is using the TSANet structure to create relationships that are outside of the scope of that basic and premium TSANet. And again, the basic and premium works really well. It's a great way for you to establish a relationship with a company that maybe you call once a year, right? Or have a very limited relationship. And in some cases, maybe you call them all the time. Maybe it's once or twice a month that you end up calling them. But sometimes those relationships just aren't what you need. So what we've done is given you the ability to use the legal structure that's already in place, the tactical database that I'm going to show you here in a minute, already in place, to create relationships that are beyond that. And it may be just a specific one-to-one relationship with another company, or it could be a very strategic relationship that involves a very small group of partners where everybody needs to collaborate with everybody else. So it's even a mini ecosystem from the open group TSANet, or it could be in a partner program where it's multiple relationships, but from the host perspective, it's a one-to-many with their partners, and from the partner's perspective, it's a one-to-one relationship with a host. So you've got those abilities. These are what we call custom groups, and they're set up into what we call peer groups, which is what you see as the one-to-one or the many-to-manys, or they're partner groups where it's that one-to-one relationship from the partner's perspective. And these partner relationships over here, these are typically, I mean, it could be 10, 20, or 100, 200, 300, 400 companies that are part of those ecosystems. Okay, so actually this is my last slide, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to go in and kind of show you the database here a little bit. Pull this over. So what I've done here is I've logged in as EMC, and this particular account, which you can see up here at the top, and let me see if I can make this just a little smaller, is you're going to see this is the My TSANet space. And as we dig into this a little bit, what you're going to see is this is basically a shortcut to specific relationships. And as we go through the decision tree here, you're going to see how that's set up. If you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see the member directory. So this is going to be actually all companies that are in TSANet, but the ones that you have relationships with are the ones that are highlighted here. And you can filter that out if you want to. You could just set this up for my relationships, and it'll do that as well. So now these are the companies that I have a relationship with. Now, what kind of relationship that is, you'll see as you dig in through the decision tree. So in this case, I've logged in as EMC, and I'm going to collaborate with Microsoft. So what it's going to do is I'm going to click on the M's, and then I'm going to click on Microsoft, and it's going to pull up all those relationships that I have. This is an area here that is new that we've just added. This is an internal notes area. So if you're a manager on this call, and you would like to add a note that only your people would see. For example, in this case, it would be only EMC people, and only when they're looking at Microsoft, you could add a note in here to do that. If you want to know more about that, just get a hold of me and I'll show you how to do that. But here now it's pulling up all the different relationships that I have with Microsoft. Well, in Microsoft's case, the way they've set this up, as the bigger companies do, is they've got multiple regions. And in a lot of cases, you'll see multiple departments. If I were to click on IBM, you'd see a combination of both, product type as well as different departments. But in this case, you can see they've got the Americas, they've got Tokyo, Japan, China, EMEA, right? And here's actually a custom group that we'll talk about in a minute down here. But I've got both basic and premium TSANet. So again, back to that other point, the key thing is, well, if you're talking to a customer and you can say to that customer, look, I can engage Microsoft for you, but I need to know what level of entitlement that you have with Microsoft, so you know whether to choose the basic or the premium TSANet. I'm actually going to run through both of them here because Microsoft is a very good example of this. So in the basic TSANet, what they're now going to do is they're going to provide you instructions on how you should engage and work with Microsoft. And it's pretty well set up in a pretty good template up here. We've got different products and services that you can designate. What information should you capture about that customer before you call? And then here, how should you contact Microsoft? And what they do is they give you a number to call, and then they give you a code to use. And then you've also got an escalation point down here at the bottom. So it's a pretty simple way to do it. This could be set up multiple ways. And again, in the basic TSANet, what we're doing is we're letting that member define what a mutual customer is. And this up here in this area here is where they're going to give you information on that information you're going to need to have before you contact that company. And like I said, I want to give you some contrast to this. So now I'm going to go into the premium TSANet using that same decision tree with Microsoft. And this time I'll go back to the Americas region, but I'll go to the premium TSANet. And now you can see it's a little bit different here. They're saying, you know, if this is calls coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning, but it involves a premium level customer or a customer that's entitled to 24/7 support, then I'm going to need a little bit more information. And then what they're actually doing here is they're telling you to call a number, but they're actually telling you, hey, why don't you have that customer on the line with you when you call? Because we want to make sure that that call goes into the right place and is given the proper attention that it's needed. You're going to find that these documents, we call contact documents, vary a lot between companies. And what's important for you to note is, remember, I said in the basic TSANet, we let the member define what a mutual customer is. Well, a lot of companies are different from Microsoft in that even in the basic TSANet, there needs to be some level of entitlement. So they may ask you for an account number, or they may ask you for this particular product serial number, or whatever happens to be. And what this means is when you've got that customer on the line and you need to know, you're going to engage or work with another company, is to get into the database and go look and see the way that that company wants you to engage them. And then if you're calling one company more than another, then what you can do is actually use this My TSANet space to come in and set up these tiles that takes you directly in to the contact document for that company and directly into that relationship. Okay, and many of you will be using group logins, which is an encrypted URL, and you'll come in and you'll give your name and you'll give your email address, and what it'll do is take you into a group login where these tiles have already been set up for you. And if you've got questions about that, again, get a hold of us and we can direct you to the person within your company that set up those things, as well as give you a little bit more information about it. I want to touch a little bit on custom groups before we close out here, and that is, again, to give you the ability, you can use these big open groups, which most of you are going to be part of, but in a lot of cases, companies have set up these custom groups. And this one right here is called MVEC. And this is a good example of a strategic group that has been set up. And what we do with most custom groups, not all, but most of them, is we actually set up what we call a microsite. So in this particular case, there's a small group of companies. Obviously, EMC happens to be one of them that's part of this. And what we do is we set up a microsite and give the ability for that group, or typically a host, to put in knowledge or training exchange articles that are only specific to this group. Because keep in mind that if you're not part of this particular custom group, you're not going to see it. And it gives the ability for you to set up a real good strategic relationship and a specific path into a particular company. So as an example, if I go here to collaborate, now I'm going to see certain companies, but only those companies. And in this particular case, this particular custom group is set up to where if a ticket in a SEV1 situation is opened up on both sides between the company that is initiating the call and the company receiving the call, then this is put into a very high escalation path. And as example, if I go here and go to Citrix, what you're going to see here in their instructions is they've actually set up a specific path for that call that would come into place using this particular relationships. So if you're part of a custom group, the way that it's going to be designated is by this green tile here. And you're going to see the same thing down here when you get into the directory. You'll see the green tiles designated. That it means that it's a custom group and it can have a totally different set of elements behind it as opposed to the main basic or premium TSANet. In several cases, there may not have to be a mutual customer involved because the mutual customer's already been identified by the product set that they're part of. And you wouldn't use that custom group unless they were part of that product set. So another key takeaway out of this that I want you to keep in mind is that in custom groups, that doesn't necessarily mean that the same set of elements in the basic or the premium TSANet apply. And what you need to do is you need to find out more about that custom group. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll actually post information about that group right here in this how to use section. And they can also post some internal notes about the particular group and tell you who to contact and things like that. Again, this is kind of some new stuff that's come up that we're just getting some of this internal notes section things set up. But if you're a business or a program manager, we certainly would want you to take advantage of that particular thing. Okay, I think that's really it for the database. I mean, we can dig into this more. If you want to have a specific one-to-one session for your group or even yourself or within your company, get a hold of me. I'd be more than happy to do this and kind of open it up where you can talk a little bit more without worrying about a bunch of other companies being on the phone with you. Let me go back to my slides and cover a couple of these areas here. And then we'll go ahead and open this up for questions. So one of the key takeaways that I find that people get out of this is, one, that we are an organization of members. It's different, right? We're not for profit. If there are things that you would like to see that are within the scope of multi-vendor support, and we as an organization can do something for you, we want to know about that, right? We'll take it to the board. We've got a process. We go through that. Okay, hopefully you now have a much better idea about this whole concept of the basic and the premium TSANet and these custom groups and under what circumstances you should use or can use. Some of you are part of the basic TSANet. You're never going to see the premium. But for those of you that are part of the premium, then you've got that ability to work with that other company on a 24/7 scale, but that customer needs to be entitled at that level. And if that customer isn't, then you've got the ability to use the basic TSANet and look at what those instructions are. If it's a custom group, try to understand more about what that custom group and what those elements are. The whole point of this is to raise customer satisfaction and get rid of the finger pointing. It's so frustrating for customers, and I still hear this from time to time, even though companies have gotten better about working with each other, that it's so frustrating for customers to be finger pointed back and forth. So what this does is gives you the ability to tell that customer, hey, I can work with this other company. I may need some information about what relationship is set up, but I got the ability to do that, and that's why TSANet was created. If you have problems, there are two escalation paths. Every one of those contact documents has an escalation path, and you should use that if for whatever reason that initial process doesn't work. If that escalation path doesn't work, then you should get a hold of TSANet. and we're here to make sure that that company is compliant with the relationship that they've joined into. And I can't solve any problems that you have with a company unless I know about that. Okay? There's a bunch of stuff that we've done. I didn't even get in and touch about Case Exchange, which is a new feature that we have. We've got a member web version of that now. I didn't talk a lot about how we create custom groups and things like that, which is something a lot of members are now doing, is to get involved in these custom groups and setting them up and implementing them. But those are other webinars that we've done. There's information on the website about doing those kind of things, and certainly invite you to take a look at that or get a hold of us if you've got questions. So let me open it up. Stephanie, I know you're on. Is there anything that I missed that you want?
No, not at all, Dennis. I was only going to reiterate what you just said about the wealth of information that we now have on the website, which includes how-to videos on how to run your account and how to do things like add users, change and edit your contact process documents. Really worth having a good look round if you've got 5 minutes with a cup of coffee.
Okay, and so if anybody has any questions, I think you can open up your little sidebar there, and you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Or if there are no questions, then we'll close everything out. Everybody just another minute or so here. You have a question. Brian, you should be off mute. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so looks like you need an account to be able to access TSANet. How do I sign up, and if there's any instructions on that?
You know, the easiest way to do it would be to go ahead and send, you can send it to membership@tsanet.org and tell us, you know, what company you're with. Obviously, we'll know that by the email. And we'll either set you up with an individual account, but there are people within your company that may have set up group IDs, and so we want to go back to them and just make sure that we're setting you up into the right view so that you see certain companies or certain custom groups. So if you just send us an email, we'll either set you up as individually or we'll set you up with your TSANet business manager, and they'll guide you to what group login they want you to use.
Okay, great, thanks. I'll also check here as well.
Okay, very good. And so it looks like Paul's got a question. Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I did. I joined in a couple minutes late. Is there a copy of this presentation where I could actually just start and listen from the beginning?
There is, and Stephanie will send it to you, and she won't even charge extra for it.
That's right.
Okay, so yeah.
Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah,
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah, we'll get it out. No problem. Okay,
That was it for me.
All right, very good. Okay, it doesn't look like we got any more. Oh, wait a minute, we got another one. I tell you what, let me try and do this here. Hang on, Stephen, we'll get to you here. Wow, it's not letting me unmute you. Stephen, I see you got a question, but for some reason, I don't know why, it is not letting me unmute your line.
Is it a long question? Perhaps Stephen could type it in?
I don't know. You could try that, Stephen, or we can call you back or get a hold of you. You could send us an email. Find out. I don't know why it's not letting me unmute your line. But for whatever reason, it's not. So, Stephen, I hate to do this. If you want to try to type that in, we'll see if we can see it. But I just don't know what's going on with that, Stephanie. I can't unmute him.
I'm afraid as a panelist, I can't help with that, Dennis.
Yeah. Stephen, Stephanie's going to send you an email, and we'll make sure we get your question answered there. Okay. All right, everybody, I think that's it. Thank you so much. I hope you found this informative. Try to keep these short, and looks like we'll be able to give you a few minutes back of your half hour. Certainly, again, if you've got any questions, membership@tsanet.org, If you want to contact me directly, it's dennis@tsanet.org, or you can contact Stephanie at tsanet.org. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.